I think Khamenei's death is a turning point, but we're not at the end of the process. I think we need to have a common voice towards de-escalation. We're not involved, and we do not plan to be involved in the military action in the region.
Vladimir Putin is reduced to issuing statements because there's not much more that he can do.
Hopefully.
So, what does America's latest Middle East entanglement mean for Europe's eastern flank? Is it going to draw Washington's attention and resources away from Ukraine? To discuss this, I'm going on the record with Oana, Romania's foreign minister, here in our studio in Warsaw. Minister, thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you for having me.
So, you're going to meet your Polish counterpart, Minister Sikorski, later today. Is Iran going to be the #1 issue?
Iran, I think, is now the #1 issue in terms of the attention of most of us diplomats, because of the escalations in the region, but also because we have citizens that are now there. They are now worried, and we're all doing our best in the bilateral relationships, in our own ministries, but also at the European level, to help de-escalation, for one, and also support our citizens to make sure they have the proper information to take the proper decisions to be safe as it is possible in this type of risk.
So do you want to coordinate with Poland on some of these measures?
We're going to discuss about that, but we already have alignment on many topics, and I would say in terms of our relationship now with the states in the Gulf, in terms of how we're looking at the current developments, we have similar priorities.
Right. No European country has so far joined the US military action, with some governments even explicitly saying it's not really in line with international law. What is Romania's position on this?
Well, I have been very clear on this, and we have been clear as a country that we believe that we need to support the future that the Iranian people are choosing, and I have seen the joy with which they have received the news. And in that sense, it is very clear now that the only transition to a possible democracy, the transition to Iran as a state that has economic development, that goes back into a rule-based order, was not able under the dictatorship they had. Now, that being said, in our history, if we look back in 1999, we have also had a transition to democracy that had violent episodes in history. I'm not saying they were justified or if they were the only alternative, or still have our institutions look into what happened in 1989, even so many years later. But I am a product of the decisions of those years, and I have lived through democracy. I have lived through years in which I was able to be free in my decisions, to build, and we have seen what that has meant for Romania. We have.
But do you see similarities between the Romanian revolution back then and what is happening in Iran? I mean, yes, there were some celebrations, but there were also demonstrations supporting the government.
I'm not saying they're the same thing, but what I'm saying is I know for a fact from my experience in Romania, for the experience of Romania as a country in this transition, that once you get out of dictatorship, that very clearly allows for the freedom to flourish. Now, I'm not saying Iran is out of that type of control, of that type of a regime that doesn't allow for the freedom of their citizens. As I have said previously, I think Khamenei's death is a turning point, but we're not at the end of the process. And we are, of course, very worried, especially on the effect it has on the region. I have spoken with my counterparts in the region, and I have shared this as well with ministers of foreign affairs in the European Union, that I think we need to have a common voice towards de-escalation. Maybe even a temporary ceasefire, a negotiated temporary ceasefire that would allow us to properly manage the evacuation of our citizens.
So a ceasefire between what, Iran and the US and Israel?
And Israel.
So is this something you and Minister Sikorski are going to propose?
I cannot speak on behalf of other ministers, but what I can speak on is towards this objective to make sure we protect civilian lives and we protect people that did no harm from harm. And I think this is a valid objective for our citizens, but also for citizens of the countries in the Gulf that have been unjustified, unprovoked. They did not provoke the attacks that have taken place over their territory, over their sovereignty. And of course, that is true also for the need to protect the innocent citizens of Iran as well.
Do you see any indications that such ceasefire is what the US administration would welcome?
I think it's a conversation we need to have, but also in this process, I have seen some of the very, let's say, vocal critics to the United States decision. On the other hand, I would love to live in a world where a UN resolution would take dictators out of their place and manage the transition to democracies, but we're not there yet. We need to aim in that direction. We need to have stronger instruments to allow us to have these transitions, but I think we need to focus on the objective rather than condemning now the countries that have taken out a leader that did not have the support of its people, that had a large number of murders, tortures. It has went against the human rights and against international law. And I think it is true to say that Iran was and still continues to be a threat.
It's interesting that you talk about objectives, because the US administration has mentioned a number of these objectives in the operation, and you mentioned one which is effectively regime change. But President Donald Trump has built his political stance, foreign policy stance, on no more foreign intervention. So don't you find that a bit inconsistent?
Well, we weren't part of the United States decision to take action. But now we are in this stage where we need to choose, not necessarily in terms of military action, because we're not involved and we do not plan to be involved in the military action in the region. But I think we need to say very clearly that when we speak about what is happening in the region, we see the Iranian people that deserve a freedom in their future, that deserve the right to choose. We see the human rights that have been violated there in Iran. And also we see the unprovoked attacks on the states on the Gulf. So I stand with those states. I stand with the people of Iran that want to see their country going forward on a democratic way in which they feel no harm, in which they are not imprisoned because they choose to have the freedom of assembly, in which torture is not a part of the instruments that power has in how they relate to their citizens. And here, I think United States and Israel are in the process of helping the Iranian people in that direction. Now, I'm not saying that their decisions are perfect. We did not coordinate with those decisions, nor were we involved in it. I have been also public on the clarity of the fact that, yes, these decisions are not strictly within the international rules, but I think it is very important when we look at the current situation to make sure that how we use our voice, how we use our diplomatic channels supports the path forward. And the path forward now, I do not think, is to support those that have supported the previous regime in Iran.
Right. Let me ask you about wider implications. You know, this is another leader of a, let's say, Russia-friendly country. It was Venezuela first. Now we have Iran, and before that we had Syria as well. Yes. So is America turning on Russia's allies?
Well, I think your question is the right question in the sense where we need to look at the implication it has also on the power that Russia has to continue the aggression that is closer to our border. And it is very clear for Romania and Poland that Russia had a strong partnership with Iran, that the drones that entered our airspace and your airspace, the Shahed drones, are based on Iranian design, partially through the years of the war, also Iranian production or technology transfer. So we do hope that we're going to see a Russia that has less support from its partners. Specifically, we do not believe Iran now can, at this moment, continue to support as it has in the past the war in Ukraine.
Should Vladimir Putin be concerned about the US ability to track down an unfriendly leader?
I think the question that you asked has, or at least the way I perceive it, has this underlying interpretation to it, which is we need to discuss again in international formats, be it United Nations, what is, again, the rule system that we want to protect. Now, I'm not saying Vladimir Putin should be protected as an individual. It is absolutely clear that
he's been accused of war crimes.
He's accused of war crimes, and I think the world would definitely be in a better position if Vladimir Putin would not continue to rule over Russia in a way in which it does harm to its own citizens, sending them to death, imprisoning them if they want to protest against the leadership and so on.
Killing a political leader is a taboo, isn't it?
But we need to go back to the political and diplomatic dialogue, and again go back to this discussion and see how is it that we can look together at the rules in a way in which, yes, we have stronger instruments for intervention when it is needed, but also we need to recreate a predictable frame forward.
Right. One of the reasons I asked this question about Vladimir Putin being potentially worried about this development is, of course, that, you know, for a moment it seemed he believed that America was Russia's great friend, and that America was actually listening to his narratives about Ukraine and was sympathetic to his arguments. And suddenly America goes after a rather close ally, and Vladimir Putin is reduced to issuing statements because there's not much more that he can do.
Hopefully.
So is this going to change the dynamic of US-Russian relationship also in the context of Ukraine? This is probably the question I was driving at.
Yes. I do not think that the United States and Russia share the same value system. I do not think the United States and Russia should or will be strong allies or allies in the present moment or in the future.
Okay, so you're saying Vladimir Putin should be worried about this development?
Definitely. As I have said before, not only in terms of the diplomatic relationships with other states and with the United States or with Europe, but also specifically from this very pragmatic point of view, which is the fact that Iran was helping Russia throughout this war. So Iran now can no longer be an aggressor in terms of supporting Russia in the war as it has been in the past, and it's important that they do not go back to their ability to do that.
I want to go back to this European reluctance to get involved, let's put it this way, apart for expressing the sentiments you just expressed, but in terms of real power, hard power, the Europeans seem to be really reluctant. So my question to you is this a consequence of the fact that relations between Europe have been damaged by the tariff confrontation, Greenland, other issues?
No, it's a consequence of the fact that we are a political project that has been created to generate peace. We have grown our economies in peace times. And I think no one in Europe, and I would dare to say almost no one in the world, wants another world war. No one from the citizens, diplomatic circles, political leaders that are on the right side of history. I think that is the reason why everyone is very reluctant now in terms of how we relate with the conflict, in terms of what all can do in the next.
But in the past, Europeans, at least some Europeans, I'm not saying every European nation, but there were coalitions of the willing, if you will, supporting the US in Iraq, in Afghanistan, after 9/11. This time around, everybody seems to be a bit more reserved. And I'm just wondering if the latest tensions between Europe and the US are not a contributing factor here.
After 9/11, we also have the Article 5 that has been invoked, and it's important to remember again that the only time the Article 5 has been invoked to support United States in the decision that they have taken. It's also that the United States has not invoked Article 4 or Article 5 to this moment in the allied conversation. So I don't think we are now at the conversation moment where other countries are needed or requested to join the conflict in an explicit, formal manner. And I really think at the current moment, our diplomatic perspective, which is one towards de-escalation, doesn't relate directly to any other episode from our transatlantic relationship. In terms of security, I think the relationship has been and will continue to be strong, even if it had and will continue to have more complicated episodes in recent months and in the recent year. But I do feel and think that for European leaders, the key objective now is the security of our citizens, and that is how we coordinate our decisions going forward.
You're going to meet Minister Sikorski, so I thought maybe I'll share, you probably heard that anyway, but I thought I'll share the quote from his speech in Parliament last week, where he said, "We look at the changes in the US with understanding, but also concern. We have been and will continue to be a loyal ally of America, but we cannot be suckers." So do you share his concern that occasionally Europeans are suckers?
We do not share necessarily the same way of framing our thoughts. He is also in our group of ministers of foreign affairs. He has quite a reputation for the way he frames it.
Yes, he got a point.
But if we are to look at the point of it, there, yes, we share with Poland, and I share with Minister Sikorski the analysis in which we are dedicated to the strong partnership with the United States, to our strategic partnership with the United States. Both Romania and Poland are countries where the military presence of the United States is very important. Our country with the economic and people-to-people ties with the United States are very, very important. But we're also two countries that are at the core of our economic development, our transition from the 90s to the present moment, connected to the European path. So that means we need to look at the relationship with the United States from both angles. We have invested a lot in it, and we will continue to invest a lot in it and make it a priority. In the same time, of course, we need to look at the fact that the United States has taken a decision to decrease the priority they have on Europe as such. And that, of course, creates a level of concern, especially on the countries on the eastern flank. But the conversations I've had in Washington as well reaffirm the strategic partnership and the clarity in many leadership circles, including in the Republican Party, that the security of Europe, of the eastern flank, of the Black Sea, is something that they are invested in.
What is a specific example of that you can give us to say this relationship is still solid? We remember that there was some concern the US would pull troops from Romania, potentially also Poland, so the eastern flank.
Yes.
So what is the counter evidence, let's say?
For us, it is very important to work on increasing the capabilities of air defense, especially because that's the main type of challenge that we have seen. And we have worked within NATO and bilaterally with the United States in terms of radars, in terms of participation in military exercises, in terms of increasing the partnership we have on monitoring the airspace, being able to counter hybrid interferences in the future.
So in practical terms, you haven't noticed any real deterioration in America's involvement in, let's say, Romania's
We would be
security.
naive to say nothing has changed.
Okay.
If I would be here in this dialogue and saying we're looking at the relationship in 2026 as we've looked in 2025 and in 2024 and in the years 2000s and so on, of course we're not looking at the relationship in the same way, simply because it is very clear that the United States has stated in the diplomatic conversation and also publicly that they are re-evaluating the allocation of resources. But for Romania, it is very clear that the transatlantic partnership is essential. It is also very clear that there is a strong partnership between the European Union and the United States, even if we have now strong points of disagreement, like on the online platforms, for example. But if we look at this relationship from a bilateral perspective or from a European-US perspective, the financial ties, the security partnerships, the people-to-people ties, I think are strong enough anchors to weather any storm.
All right. I'd like to move on to Ukraine. There are two contradictory takes at the moment among analysts and also some diplomats. You know, some are saying this war on Iran means that Moscow is weaker, Iran cannot help, and therefore it's good for Ukraine. And it also shatters the illusion that America and Russia are actually cooperating very closely. Others are arguing that America's entanglement is pulling resources away from Ukraine, potentially draws attention away from Europe in general. So to which view do you subscribe?
I think, first of all, yes, it is true that any military conflict creates a pressure on resources. So that, I think, is undeniable.
So this is a risk for Ukraine?
That is undeniable. That's also one of the reasons why I think we need to go forward to support the de-escalation.
And ceasefire?
In the same time, we also need to look at what Ukraine has learned through this war and how it can be of help in terms of expertise for the countries in the Middle East. For example, Ukraine has learned how to stop drones from having successful attacks on their cities, which the Middle East countries have also successfully done, but with significant more resources in terms of the expenses of the air defense systems that they currently use. I think it is one moment where the expertise, the training, the capacity that Ukraine has built can be of help in terms of transfer of the learned lessons from the war to the region. So Ukraine is now a more valuable partner to NATO, but also to Gulf states. I would say it's one of the moments where we can see this more clearly in terms of what the other countries in the future and currently can have as a military dialogue as well with Ukraine. So
the bottom line on Ukraine is what? It's positive for Ukraine, this entire development, or complicated? We can use the word positive in analysis when the war is finished. I think until we reach a peace agreement, until we make sure that citizens are safe, and now I say this for Ukraine, but I say this for, I say this for us as well in terms of our main objective is to protect our citizens, to support as much as we can that civilian lives are not lost, and we have a peace process for Ukraine as well, and in the Middle East the same. We're running out of time, so
Sorry.
I just wanted to ask, do you think this situation is increasing pressure on Moscow to treat the peace negotiations with Ukraine seriously?
I don't think Moscow has treated the peace negotiations with Ukraine seriously so far. I think we still need to focus on increasing the pressure in financial terms with the sanction package. What is of concern now is the energy market and the oil market because of the Hormuz Strait and the insurance risks there. And here, something that we can do together with Europe and the United States is to make sure we use our energy production capabilities to balance future risks in the market.
Right. I wanted to ask you about another topic. On Monday, President Macron said France would expand its nuclear arsenal, and that actually it was working with Poland, Germany, Denmark, the Dutch, Sweden on some form of nuclear sharing. So why is not Romania part of this?
Well, our presidents are going to talk soon about this, the president of Romania and the president of Poland as well.
So would Romania like to be part of this new French-led initiative on nuclear sharing?
It's an important question, and people have addressed it back home in Romania as well, but it's a national security and defense question that still needs to be addressed by the president.
But you're the head of the committee.
The president is the head of the Security Council of the country.
So it's up to the president to negotiate over this?
It's up to us in the Security Council of the country that is presided by the president.
So what is your personal opinion on this?
Oh, as a Minister of Foreign Affairs, I rarely have personal opinions that are public on topics that are so important. But the imperative of every country is to ensure the security of its citizens. And here I have full trust in our president and full trust in our interinstitutional decisions that we're going to take the best decision in this topic as well.
Minister, thank you very much for speaking with us.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for watching On The Record. I'm Adam Jasser. See you next week.